And now, the show for people who have a fantasy team, but no time to run it. Who were well prepared for draft night, but not for the weekly grind of a long season. It's The Cheat Code, a shortcut to Sunday excellence, starring fantasy guru Kenny Parker, and hosted by sports radio veteran Mark, the Phantom Lowe. So let's get to it. Here he is, the Phantom.
Thank you, Stones McCoy. Yes, it is time for the Cheat Code, the special Wednesday episode of the Cheat Code. Basically, on Tuesday, the guru, Kenny Parker, his 9 to 5 became a 9 to 7.
Yep.
And basically that's what happened, right, Kenny?
Yeah, motor took a dump, and that was a motor that was critical to our building.
And that's not a euphemism. That's actually a real motor.
Yeah, that's a real thing that
down.
happened. That's an engineering term.
I thought maybe, with your degree, you learned the motor take a dump. That was probably the second week.
That's the second week.
So we are back for the Cheat Code again, and a lot of stuff on the horizon. All the segments that you've grown to love with all the sounders and everything. But my intro today, Kenny Parker, and this is probably I'm a little biased on this, but after watching the weekend, especially the one game where they missed 5 kicks in the last quarter and saw a bunch of other kicks missed throughout the weekend, I'm just thinking, can you make Justin Tucker the kicker for all teams?
You should.
Can you just make a hologram of him or something and just put him in every game?
I think like clones, they can make them and age them faster.
Or teleport him.
Yeah.
Do the thing where he just, who needs a kicker? It's like the red zone. Get him out to the Niners-Packers game, and he goes in and kicks for Mason Crosby. Thank you very much.
If you could transport him like Star Trek, I would have Justin Tucker just zoop, and I think every team would be up for it.
I think it would be a tremendous idea. I am a Justin Tucker stan, as the kids call it.
You're an OG stan.
I am an OG stan for Justin Tucker, wasting high draft choices. Well, it's not a waste. Using high draft choices on him to the bewilderment of many of my compadres, and it always works. So that's our intro today. But I think what we need to do is get right in. We need to dive right into it. So let's get into that first segment, the one that Stones loves to play the sounder for.
Inside the mind of a fantasy guru, it's time for Parker's Process.
That's right, Parker's Process, where you go inside the mind of Kenny Parker, the guru, and find out how the heck do we deal with all these things. A couple of them, actually have 2 of them for you today, Kenny. And the first one is one that I think that all of fantasy football owners have agonized over since time immemorial, since back in the day where I invented the hookup. And that is when you got your lineup almost all set, but there's that one choice that you have to make. And it doesn't matter how good your team is, how even bad teams get it all down to that one choice. Yeah. It's either who's my third wide receiver or should I use this guy for the flex? And you agonize over it. And in your mind, you've got the rest of your guys set. So you don't worry about them. And it's only this last one. It's either Cortland Sutton or Tyler Boyd.
Right.
And that becomes your whole world for a while.
Right.
And every owner does it, and they do it almost every week, I think, unless you've given up. So that means that you have had to do it too. Even the guru does that. Take me inside the mind of the guru as he's agonizing over that last-second decision, and how do we make that a little bit easier on ourselves?
Yeah, the agonize is a good word because that's exactly what it is.
Well, I'm a professional.
Yeah, you're good at this. Sometimes it's a good it's an easier decision because you have 2 good options. Sometimes you have 2 medium options and you're just afraid you're going to make the wrong one. And in the worst case scenarios when it's 2 bad options and you're going against another team that's maybe better than you and you're just like, I have to make the right decision, or if I mess up this one decision, I'm going to lose. So the first thing I always say is go back to process. So we'll call this Parker's Process. You got to stick with the process.
Yes.
The thing to remember is that it could come down to that decision, but the other roster spots that you aren't agonizing over aren't going to do exactly what you think they are.
So that makes even worse when you decide, hey, this is the one thing that's going to decide everything that happens this weekend, even as insignificant as it might be.
Yeah, so the first thing to remember is that the decision is not as significant statistically as you think it is. It is significant, and you want to get it right.
Sure.
But don't worry that if you get this one decision wrong that you have no chance of winning, because that's simply not true.
It's totally what I do, though.
Totally I do it too. I mean, it's very hard to fight that instinct, but the more you play and the more you make these decisions and get them right. Sometimes you get them wrong, but then you see, why. You just want to stick to the process. So there is a process, a criteria that I use while making these crazy decisions. And we've talked about some of them before, but I'll just go over them again. The first thing I always look at is if I have two receivers that I'm judging between, I look at the over-under in Vegas. I go, what do the sharp people that set the lines for these games think the score of this game is going to be? Is the over-under 55, which is becoming more and more common these days, or over 50? It didn't used to be, but with the way the rules are,
pretty high, right? Yeah.
Yeah, with the way the rules are, it's becoming more common to be 50 or higher. Now, a game that's 48 is considered kind of low. Not 48. Let's say 45 is considered kind of low. But if I have a receiver in one game and the over/under is 42, and I have a receiver in the other game and the over/under is 55, because both defenses are horrible and one offense is really good, and the other team's going to have to throw to keep up, I'll use that as a tie break between two similar level players.
Okay.
And it's
so that's one of the things you're looking at, though, right?
But the next thing I look at, and we've talked about this before, is matchup. Is there a Jair Alexander or a Jalen Ramsey that is going to shadow my DeAndre Hopkins or Keenan Allen? Do these defensive players cover players out of the slot, or do they cover the X receiver, or do they stay on one side of the field? Do they move and follow the best player? That's becoming far less common, and even Jalen Ramsey's not doing that as much. But there are certain matchups, and I'll use that as a tiebreak, slightly less than the over/under one.
But you're building a kind of a table here. You're building, okay, this is all the different things that I go through.
And sometimes you won't check every one. Sometimes one guy will get 3 and one guy will get 1. Sometimes it'll be even, and you're like, I still don't know. But sometimes it'll be, it's a high over/under. Their secondary's horrible. And the next thing I'm going to talk about, the third thing that I use is QB. How good is the quarterback for my wide receiver? Is it Patrick Mahomes or is it Taylor Heineke or Davis Mills or so sometimes you'll have a really good player on a bad team and he'll get tons of targets, but like the Chiefs playing the Bills last week, I knew that was going to be a high scoring game more than likely. And I know that Josh Allen's a great quarterback. I really liked his receivers in that game. I played Emmanuel Sanders in my big money league,
and he might have been in one of those kind of things. And Emmanuel Sanders is a receiver that could get in one of those last-second decisions for you.
Yeah, and I was going back and forth between him and Allen Robinson and Allen Robinson has just fallen off the map, but he still has that name recognition. And in the end, it was an easy decision because he checked all the boxes, and Allen Robinson's not been as good.
Right.
But basically, those are the three main things I look at. Over, under, what's the matchup for my receiver, or how good is that defense against wide receivers or running backs or whatever. And the third is the quarterback and the overall quality of the offense. Even if it's a running back, if it's an offense with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert now, and they tend to score a lot of points, they're going to get down there on the one and get tackled, and that running back's going to get that chance to punch it in for a touchdown more often than a guy that's on the Miami Dolphins or the Houston Texans, and they're never down there. So you want to target good offenses, high over-unders, good QBs, and easier matchups if you can. And then the fourth thing, when they're all equal, is gut.
Yeah.
And that's the one that's hard to quantify. And
well, yeah, it is.
And I think at the end of the day, nothing's going to make you better with your gut, but you have to react to it better after the fact. If all things are equal and you go with your gut and you're wrong, you just have to accept that you did the process, you did the best you could, and you were wrong this time. And it's usually a flip of a coin. So you just can't let it bother you, and you can't let it affect decisions you're going to make in the future. And then when you take that pressure off yourself, you tend to make better decisions. At least that's what I've found.
So really, when you first look at it, you think about it and you go, I don't know how to choose. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to flip a coin. But what you're saying is there is a process you go through. It's never gut first.
Yeah.
It's always gut last if it's a tiebreaker. So it's like when you get that helpless feeling, you're looking at Tyler Boyd or Cortland Sutton. It's like, I don't know. And if Boyd is okay, Sutton has one, I don't know what to do.
Right.
But if you go to the numbers, if you go to the facts, you can always make a more informed decision, as we always say. We're talking probabilities here. There's nothing that's absolute, but if the numbers favor Boyd over Sutton by all the parameters that you set up, then
Right.
at least I can look at it and go, okay, well, I'm making the informed decision on something that looked like
Right.
it was just throw my hands up in the air, I don't know. But
Right.
once I do by the numbers, I go through 1, 2, and 3, and then if I have to go to 4, I have to go to 4. But still, I've run through a process, and like we say, it's a process even when it looks like there's no process involved.
And process over results. If you just keep doing the process, I promise you, more times than not, you'll be right. And it might be 55% or 60. That's actually pretty good.
And that's good.
You know, and
Yeah.
it's better than the normal. And so if you keep doing that and you make the other things that make you a good fantasy player, it's just going to overall make you better. I'm going to throw out a golden key here. I'm going to share something with everyone at home.
I didn't tell Stones about that. He didn't get a sounder or any music for this.
This is fine. This is
golden earring, maybe. I don't know.
This is something that I use. I go into the numbers and look. That stuff is harder to find. But if you want a basic narrative of every single game and what the matchups are for your players in that game, there's this thing called the primer.
The primer.
The primer.
That sounds like it's in the Squid Game or something. I don't even know.
And unfortunately, the gentleman who was huge in the fantasy community, Mike Tagliere, who used to write this primer like 30,000 to 40,000 words every week.
Holy cow!
He passed away from COVID a few weeks ago. Yeah,
Thanks a lot, Kenny.
not to bring a downer, but the guy who took over for him, Pat Fitzmaurice, is one of the best fantasy football gurus in the business, and he took it up and he's doing it every week. So every week when you need to find out what your player's matchup is or how good the defense is, all that kind of stuff, just type in primer week 5 or this week primer week 6, and it'll come up and you click on that, and there's a short intro, and then there's every single game with a link, and you can just click on that, and that will give you at least a narrative that you can look at and agree with or not, do some research, but it lets you tell yourself a narrative, and it lets you be more informed while making these decisions as far as matchups and over-unders and all that. It kind of puts it in a neat little paragraph.
Fantastic job. And the last thing I'll say on this is, like you said earlier, after all that agonizing, it's probably your quarterback that's going to decide the matchup that week. It's not the two guys you've been agonizing about, but at least you've given us the tools that we can go through and make an informed decision on that last one. So that is the first part of Parker's process. But I have a second one today, and I did it only because I wanted Stones to come up with another song. So if he's got that song ready, I don't know if he does or not. There you go.
I like this one.
Oh, I like that. So moving on up, who is moving on up? And Kenny, this is a situation where you have a quarterback, and we have it every year. We had it maybe more publicized this year. When the first guy is down or the first guy's not coming, doing what he's supposed to be doing, you got a second guy who's moving on up. You bring that second quarterback up. It doesn't only affect that team, obviously, but for us, that quarterback change could affect our guys that we have on that team. So what do you do when one of your players has a quarterback change?
Yeah, and this is something that just happened. Russell Wilson went down. That's a high-profile one.
Right.
My wife
and the Giants, Danny Dimes seems like he might be. I'm not sure, but still, he could be.
We'll talk about him in the injury thing, but Russell Wilson's definitely out. And when something like that happens, it affects DK Metcalf, it affects Tyler Lockett, it affects Chris Carson. I know Stones has him on a couple teams or on one team, but this is the thing. Different situations are different. So the first thing you want to know is how long. Is it Russell Wilson, which is potentially 6 to 8 weeks?
Right.
Or is it Jimmy Garoppolo, which is 1 to 2 weeks?
But it's like every 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It resets. It's like you're saying, it resets every 2 weeks.
This is true, but you have an evaluation of the Seahawks offense in your brain with Russell Wilson as quarterback. So the first thing is, how long is that going to be changed? If it's just 1 to 2 weeks, and the backup is comparable, no one's Russell Wilson, but let's say
but he's competent.
Competent is a good
Geno Smith,
Geno Smith looked competent. We'll see if he really was.
But you can only go by what you see.
Yeah, but basically you want to take a snapshot of the offense, and then you want to start an evaluation and evolve. Keep changing that, stay water, and keep changing the evaluation based on the data that you get. So, like I said, first is how long. Second, does the backup suck? Is it Mason Rudolph, or is it Heineke to Fitzmagic? Comparable.
Yeah.
Could the backup be better, like Justin Fields and Andy Dalton?
For your guys?
For your guys. Yeah. That hasn't actually worked out, but I would say I don't know who's better for the fantasy people, because Allen Robinson has just fallen off the map, and Chicago's offense looks like trash.
Montgomery got injured, so you
Montgomery
can't really
got injured too. So, but basically you want to say, is the guy comparable? If he's comparable, I just roll with it. I treat my guys the same, and I evaluate the guy weekly and monitor it and go, is this guy sucking? Is he worse, really? Am I wrong? And I, modify my evaluation as we go. If he's horrible, then I may sit those guys the first week while I gather that information. So if Ben was to go down, Ben has not been great.
But just use him as an example.
My grandpa, we've been calling him out there. But if he went down and Mason Rudolph came in, I know that when Mason Rudolph came in last time, he was horrible. They had to modify their whole offense.
Sure.
And he's basically just going to check down, and the receivers are going to suffer. So I might, if Juju was still there, I'd probably sit him. Chase Claypool, if I had a better option, if it was close, I might sit him if Mason Rudolph was in.
Just to get a read on how Mason's going to, not only if he's good or bad, but who he's going to favor and where he's going to look.
All that stuff. You want to, when your quarterback of one of your main guys goes down, or it's your quarterback, if it's affecting your guys, you want to monitor that situation and gather the data. And sometimes it's best to stay away if you don't know, especially if you have another good option, I guess is my point. So that's kind of the way I do it. But yeah, if Russ goes down and Geno Smith looked okay, but we'll see when a defense has a week to prepare for him how well he looks, I would be concerned. I wouldn't sit DK Metcalf.
You're monitoring all this stuff all the time.
But you have a bunch of good receivers on your fantasy team, and one of them's Tyler Lockett. I would probably sit him this week unless it was a cake matchup and I was sure that he was going to have an easy time of it. If I had a comparable guy like Cortland Sutton or Hollywood, they're going in over him.
We'll talk about that later.
We
always have to talk about my team all the time.
It's a good team to talk about.
Well, excellent information there on a segment I just put in so Stones could play the Jeffersons music. That's the only reason we had that. Thank you, Kenny Parker. That's Parker's Process. A and B this week, so I think it's time to find out. Let's look back at last week and see who did their job and who didn't.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life.
Who left it on the field and who left it in the locker room. Time for Good and Bad on the Cheat Code.
Stones really did a good job on those.
He's good.
Yeah, it's time for Good and Bad. We're going to focus, if you got my message, we're going to focus on one position group this time. We did quarterbacks, I think, 2 weeks ago. I think it's time to take a look at the new well, they're always the divas, but maybe the new superstars of fantasy football.
Yeah.
It's time to take a look at the wide receivers, Kenny.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff that happened this week that I'd like to talk about. But would you rather start with the good or would you rather start with the bad?
Take the good and take the bad. You go with the good.
We'll go with the good first. The first guy needs no introduction, and he was the number one wide receiver on the week. He's the number one wide receiver in all of our hearts. He's the number one draft pick wide receiver. That's Davante Adams, who versus Cincinnati went nuclear. 16 targets, 11 receptions, 206 yards. And a touchdown, scored 37.6 fantasy points. He gets Chicago, which is their 21st versus receivers, next. Fire him up always. He's staying in your lineup.
Yeah, he's always going to play.
And you're going to feel good about it. That's all I'm really going to say about Davante. The next guy who actually finished second on the week, Mike Williams. Stones knows him well. I think he told me before the show he had him on a bench in a league. Which don't
I thought you told him never to bench Mike Williams.
I think I did, but maybe we had some conversations offline. Yeah. I don't know. He had some other good players. He's in an eight-man.
He's in one league that has like 37 teams in it, so it's kind of hard.
But versus Cleveland, which we all thought was a tough matchup, it turned out not to be. I think the over/under was in the 40s. It turned out to be 80-something points. I lost a matchup in my Dynasty League just because of it, because Justin Herbert also went insane. But Mike Williams had 16 targets. Wow, he's starting
Incredible.
That's a lot. He only caught 8 of them, but because it's him, it doesn't matter. 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. So
a couple of those, he was standing by himself on one side of the field, and you wonder if the defensive coordinator was Stones and had no idea that Mike Williams was good and went, no, you don't need to cover that guy. Why don't you put 6 guys on Keenan Allen? That'll be a good idea.
He's like a gigantic man, so I don't know how you lose track of him.
Well, Stones is not the greatest DC. I guess that's what we're hearing.
So he's the number 2. I looked it up because I knew Stones would want to know about this. He's the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy this year.
So you don't really bench that guy then?
Yeah, I say he has one. He's gone for 22.2, 22.1, 33.2, 2.1.
That's why Stones. I'm down on this guy.
Yeah, and 36.5. So if you, so he had
Stones.
one catch, but this is perfect. Guess which one's the outlier? of all those. It's the 2.1 from last week.
Yeah, I
so
think
this
so.
is a good reminder, and I fall prey to it too. I don't blame Stones. You know, it puts some fear in your heart. You're like, man, he only got one catch. Can I really count on this guy? I have other good options. You know, I have a guy who's more reliable in the matchup. No. Anyone at home, Stones, I'll give you this advice too. Until further notice, never bench Mike Williams ever for the rest of the season. In my rankings rest of season, he is a top 5 wide receiver.
Plus, he's got Justin Herbert throwing it to him.
That's the other
he's
part.
Got this guy's going to be flinging it all day, and he doesn't like Keenan Allen. We've figured that out.
Yeah, he's the best draft in fantasy this year because of where he was drafted
Right.
and where he's at right now. He's a locked-in auto start. The next guy we're going to talk about is your guy, Hollywood.
Oh, Hollywood, yeah.
Hollywood Brown,
I
Marquise
made
Brown.
fun of Stones for half an hour. Now you're talking about a guy I benched.
Yeah, and I'm playing against you next week, and he's up
Well,
and
that's later in the show.
yeah,
We'll discuss that.
He's up
yeah.
and down, but he's more up than down lately, and he had no catches in the first half, I think.
That is correct.
And I was like, wow. And I had a parlay on him to catch 4 balls. That's how I knew. And then I changed the channel. We started watching a movie, and I clicked back towards the end of the game, and he had 9 catches.
Yeah.
So he had 10.
Lamar is like, he's just every once in a while he just go to a guy and go to a guy and go to a guy.
And that's what he did. He went to him 10 times, and he got 9 catches, 125 yards, 2 touchdowns, obviously, 33.5 fantasy points. And he helped them overcome a 16-point fourth-quarter deficit, and they were up against it. And I had a bet on them to win, too. And it was in doubt, and I think a missed field goal came into play.
There's always a missed field goal.
Yeah, so
There's always a missed field goal.
I was like, thank you. So
That's why
between
Justin Tucker, Justin Tucker was involved, the Colts go away with the victory.
between that and the parlay I had with Hollywood, I had quite a good night. But
that's not what we're here for.
I'm just saying he's playing well, and he has 19 or more fantasy points in 4 out of 5 games. So if you didn't know who he was or what offense he was on or who his quarterback was, if you said, do you want a guy that out of 4 out of 5 games has gotten you basically 20 fantasy points every game?
I would say yes.
You're going to start him? Yeah.
So and I didn't.
Yeah. Well, and you probably should against me. You have some other good options too.
We will decide that.
We'll discuss that. But yeah, he to me he's a locked-in starter at this point. Bateman's coming back. I don't think Bateman can overcome him, at least not right away. We'll see it coming if that happens. So Hollywood owners out there, rejoice. The next guy I just wanted to bring up real quick is Kadarius Toney, who we highlighted last week. He was our number 1 waiver wire.
He was a waiver wire guy. Yeah,
he was the main guy.
Him. Yeah.
And he was versus the Cowboys. All the other Giants receivers were hurt, and then Saquon got hurt. And I don't know if you saw his ankle. They showed it.
Yes, I saw that, yeah.
So, yeah, it was gigantic.
Right,
it was like a big giant knot. And me and my wife, Brianna, my lovely wife, were like, oh, he's done for the season. But very quickly they were like, it's a low ankle sprain. It's not even a high ankle sprain.
Well, that's better than high,
yeah. And I was like, well, a low ankle sprain, a couple weeks, maybe less. You know, it sounds like we'll talk about it in the injury. But that kind of opened the door. Basically, it was just Evan Ingram and Kadarius Toney. And they had to go to him. He's their first-round pick. And they did, and boy, did he reward them. 13 targets, 10 receptions, 189 yards. And I'm telling you right now, I was watching that game towards the end. If he hadn't have thrown that punch and gotten kicked out of the game, he would have been over 200 yards. He was unstoppable. He's really, really shifty and elusive. And so I don't know when Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton are coming back, but to me, he has ascended. Like I said last week, the Giants drafted him early. They want him to be successful. They want
he's their future at the wide receiver position.
And they want to show they know what they're doing.
For Danny Dimes, yeah.
So those guys are probably still going to be out this week, and his matchup is – I didn't write it down. So I don't know who his matchup is.
We know you love him, so just play him.
Yeah, I would play him if I had him in my flex, no problem. You might have, as a wide receiver too, you might have better options, but as a flex, I got him in one league. I'm probably going to play him this week because he's going to get peppered with targets, and he's really, really talented. He did have a minor ankle injury. I don't know if you heard it when he punched the guy. He stepped wrong or something, but it sounds like he's going to be okay. So
that might be as bad as when Lamar hurt his shoulder doing his flip into the end zone. When you hurt your ankle trying to plant so you can punch a guy. All right, well, give us one or two bad because we got to move on.
Okay, so I'll go quickly through this, but Stephon Diggs was disappointing versus Kansas City, which I knew it was going to be a shootout. And I was like, this will be when he I don't own him anywhere, but I think I was playing him in one league, and I was concerned. And he only got 5 targets and 2 catches. One of those catches was a 61-yard catch. So that's nice, but 8.9 fantasy points is not
That's
nice.
not Diggs-like, no.
Yeah, and he's kind of been up and down and just average, but he's the wide receiver 25 in fantasy so far. Not what you wanted when you drafted him. You'd like him to be around 10. I do think it's coming. Josh Allen's rounding into form. He's starting to play really well. It's just a matter of time. Put Stephon Diggs in your lineup. The next guy, DJ Moore. He's
been doing great.
Yeah, this is kind of like Mike Williams. This was like his one down game after a string of a ton of great games, and it was versus Philly. He had 7 targets, 5 receptions, only 42 yards, no touchdowns, and then he had a rush for a -4 yards, which doesn't give you anything except minus points. So he ended up worse than Diggs, 8.8 fantasy points.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, but it was just a weird game. Every other game he's been over 15 fantasy points. In 3 out of 5 games he's been over 20, and in one game he was over 30. So he should bounce back versus Minnesota. They're 14th versus receivers. Start him with confidence this week. I think he has a big game. Robbie Anderson seemed to be getting a lot of targets when Christian McCaffrey was out. He didn't do anything with them.
That's crazy.
They should go back to DJ Moore. The last guy I'm going to highlight, I know that the young guys like this guy, and I like him too, Scary Terry.
Oh, yeah.
Terry McLaurin. He was going against New Orleans, and New Orleans is like the schizophrenic Gemini team. Like, you don't know, are they good? Are they bad? Are they good on defense? Are they good? You just never know which team's going to show up on either side of the ball. And he got 11 targets, so he got the targets and the attention that you wanted, but they were really, really bad targets. He only caught 4 of those 11 targets for 46 yards, 8.6 fantasy points. But this is his floor. So his floor is around 10 due to the bad quarterback play in Washington. But he has an upside of 30 any week. And he's done that in 2 games. I think one was just under 30 and one was just over. So he's a player I'm always starting, especially this week against Kansas City, whose defense is putrid.
Yes,
horrible.
we noticed that, yeah.
Yeah, Washington's defense isn't much better. So I see a shootout, Washington chasing points, him getting a ton of targets, and he should be more open this week.
Well, 2 things. First, I'm a Gemini, so watch it. Secondly, so it's even the guys, even the receivers who didn't do it this week are receivers you're still going to play all the time.
And
you're not going to get off those
And that's
guys.
why I picked these 3 guys. These are 3 guys that I would still start that had bad weeks and have been a little bit down. But
so you're trying to keep people from doing a Stones and
Yeah.
benching Mike Williams is what you're trying to do.
do not bench DJ Moore.
That's
or Terry.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's move on a little bit to something that we didn't have a sounder for, but Stones found an old one.
Uh-oh.
You got to give us from last week who did you pick? From this week, who you picking? Who are your picks to click?
It's time for Picks to Click.
That guy sounds really creepy.
Creepy.
The
I
other
love
guy,
it.
the guy who does the intros this year, that guy's okay.
Yeah.
This guy sounds really
Yeah,
creepy.
I love it, though.
Yeah.
So I picked Kirk Cousins to bounce back versus Detroit.
Oh, I don't know why you like Kirk Cousins. So
Well,
much.
he's on my dynasty team, so maybe there's some of that bias creeping in. But Detroit's been awful, so it was a tasty matchup in a bounce-back spot. Everything should have aligned. You know, Madison had a good game in being there for Dalvin Cook the week before, and he had another good game this
over
week.
100 yards, I think.
But I was
yeah.
talking to Stones before the show. I think my process might have been a little bit off on Minnesota because in the last 2 games, they scored 7 points in one of them and 19 points in the other. And that's since Dalvin
19
Cook's
against the Lions.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And as I was watching film a little bit today, I think the thing is that Alexander Madison is getting the stats. So for fantasy, he's fine. But he's not drawing the same attention from the defense on those screens. This play action was not working as good for Minnesota. I do think Dalvin Cook's going to be back this week. So I think that Minnesota's offense as a whole, it's something to watch. Are they better? Do they look more? Do they have more juice this week? They're going against Carolina, who we think has a pretty good defense.
They're
So
kind of Jekyll and Hyde.
they're kind of Jekyll and
too.
Hyde too, but I think they're a good team, and they're looking for a win too. It should be a competitive game. It's a good test. It's something to watch. He did still throw for 275 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He got you 16.4 fantasy points. He didn't kill you, but he definitely didn't click. So I like the matchup, but the process there. I think with Dalvin Cook, I analyzed their offense. I thought that they were going to do better against Detroit than they really did. The next guy I had down was at wide receiver, Hunter Renfrow. I will say that I thought Khalil Mack was going to be out in that game. and he played,
Okay.
and he wreaked some havoc. But Hunter still led the team in targets. He got 8 targets, which he's been doing consistently now.
Pretty decent number, yeah.
6 catches for 56 yards, so almost 12 fantasy points. He didn't kill you. He didn't do badly for Hunter Renfrow. And like we said last week, he's someone you can pick up and put in there and not really worry about. He did get a red zone target and a red zone catch. He just didn't get in the end zone. But they're targeting him in the red zone. We do not know how John Gruden's absence is going to affect this offense. So this is kind of like the quarterback question you were asking about. When you lose a coach, it's kind of a similar thing. If a coach gets fired or resigns.
Is it like when the teacher's gone and the sub takes over and everybody just runs wild and Derek Carr throws 79 passes next week? I don't care about the running game. Woo!
Yeah, who knows? They could have just brought Carr in this week and said, what do you want to do? And then it's just going to be Darren Waller every single play. But it could go one of two ways. I don't know if Gruden was more beloved by these guys and so they're going to be down, or do they feel more free now because he was such a micromanager and so in your face? I know that when people make mistakes, he was in their face.
Yeah.
Especially Carr. Do they play more free? That's something to watch. But Hunter Renfrow, like I said, in the PPR leagues, you can plug him in there. He's gotten 5 or 6 catches in every single game, and more of those games than not, he's gotten 6.
So he's a consistent guy. His ceiling isn't that high, but his floor is really in a nice spot.
Yep. And so I said he didn't click, but he was a little bit better than Kirk Cousins, and he did not kill you at all. He was average. Leonard Fournette was my running back. He did click.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're proud of that.
Yeah.
Get a little swagger.
Because that was the one I was kind of most worried about. I don't know if you remember. I go, I'm probably going to regret this. So it just goes to show you never know
yes,
how it's going to go.
You regretted the other two.
Yeah. He ate Miami alive. Okay, he just tore him up, and he continues to get targets. So he had 12 rushes for 67 yards, a nice average, and then he had 4 catches for 43 yards, and he got the touchdown. 21 fantasy points. Boom. Gio is working into the pass game and on third downs and in some of the
you see him once in a while, yeah.
Towards the end of the game, you might see him if they're in a close game script. But playoff Lenny or Lombardi Lenny or whatever you want to call him.
I would not call him Lombardi
Some
Lenny.
people call him that. He helped them win a Super Bowl. I think Tom Brady calls him that.
No. I don't care how many Super Bowls you have. You can't call people Lombardi Lenny.
If they win another one, baby. But he seems to be the guy. Ronald Jones is still there. Gio's working in, but he's gonna get like 4 or 5 targets probably on a game, game-to-game basis, and he's probably gonna get you 15 or so carries plus, and he's producing. So Leonard Fournette is a guy that I picked that did click, and going forward, I would start him for the moment unless something drastic changes.
Well, who do you have clicking for this week?
Okay, so we talked about him already. I'm going to go out on a limb, okay?
Oh, jeez.
Everyone at
Usually
home,
when you say that, you go, I'm going on a limb. Aaron Rodgers.
If you lost Russell Wilson and you're in a 14-team league and there is nobody out there, this guy's probably going to be out there. This is Taylor Heineke.
So are you putting waiver wire together with picks to click?
Yeah,
that's insane. I love it.
I'm going for the glory play.
Stones, make me some sort of mashup or something because I love the way he's done this.
I'm going to say
next week.
I'm going to say I'll probably regret this because it worked for me last time. But Kansas City should put up a ton of points. Washington's going to be chasing, and Kansas City's defense is horrible. Antonio Gibson's a little bit banged up. They didn't seem to be using McKissick last week, and I think they have to throw a ton to keep up. Logan Thomas is out. I think he's a good streamer to give you at least 20 fantasy points in a 6-point per passing touchdown league.
Nice.
So if you're desperate and you need someone to not kill you, Taylor Heineke, pick him up and put him in there. I would start him over, Trevor Lawrence or someone of that ilk.
Okay,
I
very nice.
I really would.
All right.
The wide receiver I'm going to go to is DJ Moore, and it's just to highlight the fact, like we said, Stones didn't start Mike Williams. If you started DJ Moore and you're concerned all of a sudden, don't be.
Just go with it.
Yeah. He's going versus Minnesota. This is a confidence pick, okay? So, like I said, Robbie Anderson was getting a lot of targets. It didn't work for them. They lost both those games. They need a win. Christian McCaffrey's coming back. It should draw the attention away.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, while he was gone, DJ Moore was the best player on the field. I think Christian McCaffrey's going to be back, so that's part of this pick. But I really do think he'll be back because this is he would have gone on short-term IR if not, unless they don't know what they're doing. And I think Ja Rule,
possible,
I think Matt Ja Rule knows what he's doing, as he seems like it. So I think DJ is going to break out this week when Christian McCaffrey takes some of that attention away. I'd start him with confidence. I think he's going to click. And the running back is a guy I picked up to play against you, and I'm going to go ahead and say
this is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, he's a running back 2 this week. I don't think he's going to destroy you or assure the win for me, but it's Devontae Booker, running back for the Giants versus the LA Rams.
That would hurt because I was going to pick him up.
Yeah.
And then for some reason I lost interest.
Yeah, you should.
I think I had to go out backyard or something and chase Lola down the street, so I forgot.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. Yeah. But he had 4 targets and good rushing production in relief of Saquon last week. I think he gets between 12 and 15 fantasy points. And if something happens and he gets in the end zone once, what if twice? Then you got something going. And I did some digging into the Rams before I made that waiver claim because I was concerned. I'm like, it's the Rams.
The guru would all. Of course, you did some digging.
They are very, and this goes for all positions. They are very, very average. They are much more average against fantasy players than you would think, and they're 17th versus running backs.
Okay.
And wide receivers similar, tight ends similar, quarterbacks similar. They're just not as good as we really think of them. They have playmakers, obviously, that can do some real damage and can shut down certain players, but they're not going to key in on Devontae Booker. I think they're going to be looking at Kadarius and Danny Dimes, and he's going to be kind of, they're going to stop
under
the radar
yeah.
a little. So
once again, you're putting the waiver wire together with Picks to Click. This might have to be a new segment.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
And we couldn't do the waiver wire yesterday. Waivers have already run. We might touch on some guys that still might be there, but these are guys that you could pick up. And if Devontae Booker should be gone, but if he's still there, you could pick him up and put him in your lineup if you have Alvin Kamara this week and they're on a bye, or you had Saquon.
Oh, it's a great point.
Pick him up and put him in there, and he's probably not going to kill you. I think 12 to 15 fantasy points.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and thank you for that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And we talk about waiver wire, we talk about injuries and stuff. So it's time to finally concentrate on the injuries and find out who's hurt.
When you walk through the garden.
Got a couple of holes in your roster? Get some help now with the waiver wire.
Very good. Go to the waiver wire here. We will hit on the injury report before we move on to the end, but waiver wire, give us a couple of guys. I mean, you've already given us a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
So that's why we went with the waiver wire music, because you've already introduced it. But give us a couple of guys who you still might, like you said, we're starting buys this week, so people are they're shopping out there.
Yeah, so I'll highlight the big guys. We talked about CMC. He should be back. Saquon has a low ankle sprain. He's out this week, probably next week too, for sure.
Probably 2 weeks.
And then after that, it gets ambiguous, but I think it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks. Chris Carson had the neck, and no updates at all. I can't get any information. So
only because he's on Stones' team. If he was on anybody else's team, they'd tell us exactly what was wrong.
There's been some doctors arguing about how bad it is and if it's deteriorated disc and it could be career-ending or it's nothing. So Stones, anybody out there with Chris Carson, monitor every day the practice report. Just Google it. If you get updates, check it.
Not a good thing when the doctors are arguing over it.
Yeah,
They did that on my vasectomy.
Dalvin Cook, sprained ankle, was a late scratch last week. Maybe he'll play, maybe he won't. He probably plays this week, helps Minnesota's offense come back. The big one, obviously, is CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Oh.
Yeah, and he's been placed on IR. That happened this morning. So he's out at least 3 weeks, likely 4 to 6 weeks. Darrell Williams and Jerick McKinnon are kind of his – Darrell Williams is his direct backup, and Jerick McKinnon, they were like a 3-headed monster.
Yeah, they were getting some time anyway, even when he was around.
Yeah,
right?
It was probably more of those guys than you wanted. Now it's a 2-headed monster, and the bigger head is Williams, Darrell Williams. But if you needed a desperation play in a 14-team league, Jerick McKinnon's not the worst play in the world. They're going against Washington, and Washington's defense is horrible too.
And if you're not in a 14-team league, if you're in one like us, 10 or 12 maybe, then the guy you talked about before, Devontae Booker, might be.
Well, and Darrell Williams is for this, but Devontae Booker too.
Yeah, he might be somebody you look at too.
Both those guys. And then Samaje Perine does not really matter. Joe Mixon should be back this week. Juju out for the season. He wasn't doing very well for fantasy. A couple people asked me this week if they could drop him to make waiver claims, and I said, yes, go ahead. He's been that bad. But the fact that he went out makes Deontay Johnson better, makes Najee Harris better, makes Chase Claypool better. All those guys should improve, and two of them have been spectacular.
Well, didn't Najee have a breakthrough game last week already, right?
He's in the top 12 in running backs already. He's like the 10th or 9th running back. I think he's just going to get more targets.
Right.
Ben can't throw it. I think Chase Claypool is the one. Deontay Johnson, same thing. He was already getting 10 targets. He'll probably get 12 now on average. But Chase Claypool was kind of being neglected a little. Like, he'd have big boom games. Sometimes he'd bust. Now I think he's a little bit more steady. I would start him with some confidence in my flex. Kenny G hyperextended his knee. That helps Kadarius Toney. Kenny Golladay should be out a week or two, and this guy's always injured. He's probably going to be injured all year. I have no faith in him anymore. Tyreek Hill has knee tendonitis. As a Tyreek Hill owner, I was concerned about that.
That would, yeah, because he's a speed merchant, so yeah.
They said knee injury, but then it kind of came out. He has knee tendonitis, which is like something that they manage. It's going to cause him to deteriorate over time, but he should be fine. He should play. Curtis Samuel, coming back for Washington, wide receiver, has a groin problem. Came back. Supposedly the groin problem was okay. Now it's back. Drop him.
They have a way of coming back, yeah.
If you have him, drop him.
So get rid of him then.
Yeah, he's not going to be. Gronk, he's out 60-40 that he won't play. I was 60% sure. Well, halfway through the day, I scratched that out and said he's out. They play tomorrow. He's not going to play. So Gronk owners, if you need a tight end, get out there. Some people picked up Max Williams for Arizona. He was really starting to round into form, get some targets, take him away from D-Hop. He's out. He had a gruesome leg injury.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. That was very ugly.
Yeah, so some people may have had Gronk, picked up Max Williams, and now they have to pick up somebody. I'd recommend looking for Zach Ertz. Dallas Goedert is out with COVID. And then finally, I'll just go to quarterbacks. Russ has a torn tendon in his finger. Best case, 4 weeks. Worst case, probably 8-9 weeks. Geno Smith is his backup. Daniel Jones had a nasty-looking concussion. I think
it sure was.
Yeah, his legs were wobbly like a newborn calf.
He was coming out of the club. Yeah, he did.
But one thing I did find out doing some research into concussions, it doesn't matter how bad they look or how benign they look, has no relevance to how bad of a concussion it is. It sounds like he's fine, and he was fine today doing walkthroughs. I think he's going to play.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because I didn't think he was just a day ago, so I think he will now. Brady has a finger. He's playing. That's tomorrow. He'll play. And the one guy I wanted to put down here is Tua. He's been out with ribs. I think he may be back this week. He's expected to practice and probable.
But he's only if you're in a 32-team league.
No, I mean,
real seriously, come on.
It affects. Well, Fuller's out, but it affects
Devontae
Waddle,
Parker,
running back Myles Gaskin. I think he's a step up for their offense.
Okay, if you say so.
Yeah, slight.
Now, you mentioned Kenny G in there, and don't judge me. I went to a Kenny G concert once.
That's what everybody calls me.
I just thought I'd put it out there.
Yeah,
it was actually very good. When he went in the crowd and was playing his
songbird.
What does he play? A flute, a sax?
I think it's an alto saxophone.
Well, he was playing it as like electric sax, and he was walking down
with his curls,
walking down the aisles at the Sacramento Community Theater. It was quite arresting, if I may say so. We have already touched on waiver wire and injury report, so we're going to go straight, if we can, Stones, to our last thing with this. Got the catchiest title, the catchiest song I think we have. Victor, there you go.
Want to know what your best lineup is this week? Well, all you got to do is ask, who should I play on the cheat code?
And that's what we're going to do. I have two of them to ask you. One of them is who do I play? One of them is more like a overall kind of a concept thing, which I'll hold for later. I know Stones has a question or two he wants to ask you. But my first one, we've kind of alluded to it, Kenny, and it's something that happens, I think, more often than not, because even after just 5 weeks we've played, we've already identified some teams in our league that are high scoring and some teams that are not so high scoring when they remember to put their players in. So I'm playing you this week. You're a high scoring team. I have, as we've talked about a million times, 6 wide receivers.
Yes.
And I can never figure out which ones to play. I have Hopkins and Allen, who I always play.
Right.
And then I have 4 guys who I can never figure out who to play.
Right.
Now, since I'm playing against you, a high scoring team, I'm thinking of taking Keenan Allen, who he's kind of like a Hunter Renfrow, kind of a glorified Hunter Renfrow. He gets his targets, but he doesn't get that many yards, and he doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. So he's got a good floor, but his ceiling isn't as high. And I'm thinking, I've got Cortland Sutton and Hollywood Brown, as we've discussed. Both of them went for over 25 points last week. Is it better for me to go ahead, or anybody that's in this situation, to go ahead and take a chance on a possible higher reward because you're facing a team that you think is going to score more points, so you need kind of maximize your potential. Is this the week I sit a Keenan Allen and put in Sutton and a Hollywood Brown? The other one I have is Tyler Boyd, who's more of a Keenan Allen kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I have Hopkins, and hopefully he's around. But then I have a couple other guys who have high ceilings, but sometimes the floor is in the basement.
Yeah.
So how do you look at that as far as making that decision?
Well, the first thing is, because you sent me this question, I think this morning, and I started looking
tell
at
everybody how the sausage
well,
is made. Come on.
Tell them how the sausage is made. I got to prepare a little bit at least. And when I looked at it, I go, Mark, your team's better than mine.
Don't pull the curtain back.
Okay, your team is better than mine. So if I was looking at it on a neutral field and we were playing, I would give you 2 points. Okay, we're close. I'm a good team.
Okay.
You're one of the best teams in the league. I have Alvin Kamara out on a bye.
Okay.
You have Mike Davis out.
I do?
So, yeah. So
I guess maybe I better go look at the waiver wire.
yeah. So
Sorry,
yeah,
I'm finally coming in. That
yeah.
was funny.
So I think that I show with my analytics and my projections and everything, you have a 60% chance of winning this week as long as you get a decent. I think
Okay.
you have Latavius Murray. So the first thing is make sure that you know that you're overmatched. But if you're overmatched, yes. And I do this in the playoffs sometimes, and I do this in the championship game sometimes. And it's worked for me, and I lost last year. But if you're overmatched, you go for that ceiling.
So if you're in a situation, research the situation.
Right.
But if you're in that situation, go ahead and take a shot.
Yeah, and it's kind of a sliding scale, but like I feel like I'm kind of in the situation with Alvin Kamara out, and your team being better than mine enough that I might be doing some.
So you're
going to
do the same. Okay.
Yeah, I might. It depends on. I'll be looking at your lineup till the kick 1 minute before
You
kickoff.
don't really have to because I
Yeah.
didn't even know Mike Davis was out.
I'm
so.
crazy.
Wait,
all the,
what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and
My double take.
And honestly, I had some other running backs, but I picked up my waiver wire pickup to block you. So that's why I did that. I might not even start that guy this week, but I'm glad you don't have him to start. You have like Latavius Murray or somebody else.
I'm
who's-
glad I'm talking to you because you
Yeah.
know who's on my roster.
If you're not going to do anything with him, hey, I wanted him on waivers, so can we hook that up?
offer me a trade.
Okay.
I'll give you something.
Okay, this segment is not about.
Yeah, it's
you
going
guys
all
trading,
downhill.
yes.
But yes, people out there, if you're overmatched and you have especially like a Hunter Renfrow, we're going to talk about Keenan in a second with your second question. But if you have a guy who's just average, he might get you 15. If an incredibly strange things happen, he might get you more than 20.
If he falls in the end zone,
But most
maybe,
times
yeah.
he's going to average like 10 to 12 points. Or you have a guy that might get you 5 or might get you 20 plus.
Yeah.
Depending, that guy can do it 5 times a year. Hollywood Brown,
Right.
he's even a little bit better than that now.
But that's exactly the kind of guy I mean. Yeah.
My process would be to put that ceiling guy in because that's how you're going to beat this person. So I try not to go crazy, and if I'm close, then I just set my lineup the best way I can with
Right.
my process. But if I'm significantly overmatched, then I go for the home run.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Stones
Yeah.
McCoy, announcer and intro man. Did you have any questions you wanted to ask our guru this week?
Well, I have one that's it's a question for the guru
Yes.
that I have here. Who are the QBs, running backs, and wide receivers that would surprise me that you would never consider sitting even if they were healthy?
Good,
In other
good
words,
question.
what's the worst no-brainers you got?
So I'm going to say this guy right off the bat, and I don't want to say this because I don't want you to do this.
I want you to answer the question.
The number one guy I could think of, just because of the conversations we've had and everybody I've talked to, the craziest things that I've heard is someone saying, "Should I sit Keenan Allen?" And we're going to go
Who
into
would
the
say that?
We're going to go into the numbers. I don't know, just a guy just said it 5 minutes ago. So with all of the Mike Williams success, it's understandable.
Keenan who?
Yeah, like he you shouldn't think that. Keenan has still out-targeted Mike Williams slightly. It's true that this last week Mike Williams out-targeted him, but it's also true that Mike Williams is more explosive. Mike Williams is making the big plays. In the offensive coordinator that came over to that team came from the Saints, and they're saying he has like the role that I can remember his name.
Michael
for
Thomas?
Michael Thomas.
Okay.
He's been out for so long. But yeah,
I'm no guru.
they're
but,
saying he's the Michael. Yeah, I know. Geez, sorry about that brain fart. But yeah, Michael Thomas. They're saying he has that role. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I will agree with the fact that Keenan is not getting 14, 15 targets a game. But Keenan Allen is still averaging 10.6 targets a game. I added it up and did the math and everything.
That's more targets than I thought.
And around 7 catches a game. So his catch rate is down a little bit, but he is averaging 73.8 yards a game, which is high.
Yeah.
When if you look at lines for bets on players.
But if he's averaging 7 catches and 73 yards, that's 14.3 points, and
Yeah.
he rarely falls in the end zone.
This is true.
And what I'm talking about in this question is, in a normal week, give me 14, 15 points off a guy, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if I'm playing a team I perceive as a high-scoring team,
Right.
then I want a guy who's going to get in that end zone because I need a guy in that 20 ceiling then.
But he's also he's got their highest target share and he's got their highest red zone target share. I confirmed that.
I watched all the games. They never throw it to him.
He must be doing something that you're not seeing. But
That's
you might be
possible.
seeing red zone and I don't know. They're supposed to show you the red zone. But anyway, I checked that. This is the thing. He hasn't, which to me screams it's coming. I told you, I think 2 weeks ago, a 2-touchdown game from Mark Andrews is coming in the next couple
You did
weeks.
tell
You
me
can
that.
book it.
Yes.
Guess what happened this week? Mark Andrews went for 2, and I don't know how many fantasy points, like 40.
Yes.
And you could just see it coming. And I just see that. I would rather you sit Keenan and start Hollywood Brown, but I don't think you're going to sit Hollywood. But
Are you trying to mess with me?
you aren't going to know, which is the great part of it.
This is crazy.
But-
I like it.
But you've known me a long time. You were nice enough to officiate my wedding. I would not do the listeners dirty. If it's me, I'm never sitting Keenan Allen until he's worse than this. I think a touchdown's coming, and I think his absolute floor is like 14, 15 points. This is just averages. So
Right.
I think he had one bad game in there. So he's really like between 15 and 19 most of the time, and he's hit that 19, I think, 3 times, around 20. He gets a touchdown, he's going to go disco, 27, 20. If he does kind of I'm trying to think of the other guy, Robert Woods. Remember, all of a sudden, they're like, really need to get Robert Woods involved. Eventually, they're going to go, we really need to get Keenan more involved, or he's going to have a game where he gets 15 targets,
Right.
and he catches like 12 of them, and he scores a touchdown or 2. And if he's on your bench, you're going to cry.
Okay, so that I accept that. I accept that. So that's a any other wide receivers that
No,
I'd be
that was
surprised?
the guy I put for
So
wide receiver.
What about a quarterback?
Quarterback, at first I put Jalen Hurts, and I'm like, nah, he's too good. This was a tough to do for a quarterback because pretty much anybody who drafted a quarterback that's good enough to start every week,
They can all pile up points, and at some point,
you're going to start him every
in the
week.
future, we're gonna do. Would you rather have a pocket passer or a dual threat? But
Yeah.
that's for the future. That's something to
So
look forward
I
to.
picked a guy that's a pocket passer because even though he's an every week starter for whoever drafted him, I wanted you to know he started slow and he has a lack of mobility that's gotten better. That's Joe Burrow. He kind of started slow, and people were really worried about Cincinnati's offense at first. And over the last 3 games, that's completely changed. He really looks dialed into me, and he's averaged around 25 fantasy points the last 3 weeks. He's getting T. Higgins back. He's getting more healthy, more used to being in there. He feels more confident in his leg. Joe Burrow owners, I wouldn't go look for someone else to supplant him, to stream over him. I would start him with confidence every week as long as this progression continues. So that's who I put for quarterback.
What about a running back?
Another guy on your team. And I don't worry about telling you this because you have no option to play him. That's James Robinson.
Oh, I like James Robinson.
Yeah, so, even though Urban Meyer's a moron, because we say this every week,
you have a problem with several coaches this year, I've decided.
You're going to have to
You
add
call
a
one
segment.
stupid. Yeah, I think
Mr.
we're going to say,
Stupid.
hey, that coach is a bleep, and
Yeah.
that'll be just a segment.
Okay.
Find a song for that.
So Matt Nagy is Mr. Stupid and Urban Meyer is Mr. Moron. How about that? Okay. So
Mr. Stupid and Mr.
Mr.
Moron,
Moron.
that's on the CW. I've seen
yeah.
that.
Mr. Moron seems to have figured out who his best running back is, at least. So
So at least he's got that going for him, which is nice.
I will say
for
this.
Moron.
I'm sitting there watching with my wife Brianna at home. We're watching.
Do you have some sort of thing where you get points when you
It's
mention her
just
name?
she was there and it was
$20 every time.
She
I like
she
that.
she was saying it too. The whole game, Robinson's killing it. He just looks amazing. He's getting all these touches. It comes down to the end, and they need to punch it in, and they're like on the 2 or 3 yard
What
line.
does Mr. Moron do?
He brings in the backup and lets him run into the line and lose 3 yards, and they lose the game. So way to go, Mr. Moron.
That's where the Mr. Moron
Yeah.
started?
Wow.
But
I love that.
It's impressive.
But Robinson's
really is.
We talked about, I'm like, you have a problem. in week 2 when we talked about Robinson.
Yes, we did talk about because I asked you, is it possible to get a guy on a team so bad that even if he's good, he's going to get buried,
Yeah.
and that team is bad?
That's true, but this guy proved last year that he can be on the worst team in the league and a horrible offense with Gardner Minshew, and he can be one of the best running backs in the league and be a leading rusher in the league. And so he's already shown us, which in fantasy is almost everything. And so if his usage the last 3 weeks is around 20 touches, if that continues, this guy, when I watch him play football, he's just good at football. I mean, he's just awesome. He's kind of like Chris Carson, late round pick that's just awesome, and came out of nowhere. But when I watch him, he's just got that glow around him. And if he gets 18 to 20 touches every week, I would never sit him.
Okay. So, question, kind of an alternative question. Do you think if Jacksonville could get rid of Urban Meyer right now, and they didn't, and there was no penalty or anything, they would just go, no, we made a mistake, he's out? Do you think they'd just go, can we have a mulligan on that?
If they were smart.
If they could do that.
But a lot of NFL team owners aren't smart, it seems.
So they're Mr. Moron Sr.
They never should have hired him in the first place with all this stuff. I mean, I think he leaked Gruden's emails.
That's what a lot of people are saying, hey, Gruden didn't do a lap dance, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So anyways,
some crazy
Mr.
coaching
Moron.
stuff going on there.
Yeah.
There's another podcast.
Hey now. All right, so that was the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. So
Yeah.
2 questions coming in from teams.
Okay,
right?
great.
Start
so,
sit.
Unfortunately, this is start sit. Unfortunately, we're going to be recapping some of the players that we've already talked about.
It's okay.
But you've already told me to my face to never sit Mike Williams.
Yeah, Mike Williams, yeah.
But what if I have Scary Terry also this week?
Ooh, I like Terry this week. That's true. And I'm looking at this week. I have my actual rankings because we're doing it on Wednesday, and I usually do them Wednesday morning.
Very good.
I kind of compile a bunch of different sources. I have Terry ranked 5th overall in PPR.
Okay.
I'm starting him in Dynasty. I think he bounced back. I have him projected for 17.6 points. I have Mike Williams 9th, 4 spots lower. I have him projected for 16.3 points. If you start 2 receivers, though, who's the other receiver that's better than those guys? Tyreek?
DK Metcalf.
No, okay, so DK
Well, then
Metcalf
that's
has
another segment we had today about DK Metcalf, his quarterback. Yeah.
And DK Metcalf's projection, I remember I moved him slightly down, but his projection was close to this. I have him 25th.
Holy bat smokes.
Russell Wilson's not his quarterback, and it kind of goes back to we got to evaluate that situation. When they're ready for Geno, does he look quite so bright? He came in a weird situation. They weren't expecting it.
Sure.
He has a unique skill set, and he's a vet, so he was ready. But when another team's ready for him, will they be able to take that offense and knock them out of stride? I'd be worried about that if I was you.
Well, I'm not the only one that's
No,
thinking
this-
this right now. Is it possible for people to get the Guru's weekly rankings? Is there a publication date on that? Is
Usually
that
it's
something we
on-
can circulate?
Usually it's on Wednesday. I'll try and have them Tuesdays now, but they progress. They change during the week. So
I think
well,
Wednesday,
people would love to have that.
I think Wednesday's Twitter feed might need to
yeah, or
Little
Friday.
better.
rankings, yeah, because that's the only reason I watch that ESPN show on Sunday is
Yeah.
because they go, well, here's the number. I mean, they're never
And-
right, of
and-
course. Here's the number 7 receiver. If I've got the Guru's rankings, I don't need that.
Well,
I like that crap.
and basically what I do is for running backs and wide receivers, I only rank the top 40. I'm not a professional ranker, but and I use other people's rankings and my rankings and
you compile them, sure.
Yeah, I compile that with
They're
stuff
composites.
that I watch, and when I see things, I move guys up and down. By Saturday, I'm pretty dialed into what I think.
Well, I mean,
There
yeah.
are some guys that are game time decisions, and that's going to affect a bunch of other people. So the most accurate would be Sunday morning, but that's going to be
We got to
impossible.
publish them earlier than that
Yeah.
in the week, though.
well,
for
we can't
people
be
to
doing
get
a
it.
show at 4:45
That's
in
right.
the morning.
Stones, do you have one more question for
Well,
us?
just for clarification, then so that one you're starting 2 wide receiver spots. You prefer to go Scary Terry and Mike Williams,
Yeah,
and leave DK on the bench.
Yeah.
I probably
Okay.
would. I'm surprised that I have Terry higher than Williams, but I do
Okay.
have a lot of faith.
They're
in him
against
this
the
week.
Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. there
Okay.
you go.
Yeah.
The last question I
That's
have is from a team, an 8-league team.
Right.
But
18 league.
the issue is not over the amount of teams; it's the usage. And you just mentioned it with Russell Wilson being out.
Yeah.
Chris Carson, he's had the neck issue. All signs are pointing to him coming back
Right.
for this week. Is he a safe play as an RB2 this week? What kind of impact does not having Russell Wilson have on the running game? Because there's 2 sides to that coin.
Yeah, that's for sure. Maybe they lean on it more because their passing game isn't going well, and Carson has got that kind of skill that he can bust a game open. I would be worried about Carson this week, I'll be honest with you. He's not in my top 30 at the moment, but that's probably because I don't have any update. Yeah, I have him projected for 8.8 points. If he was to play, he would rise in my rankings.
Sure.
But I don't think I want to say you have like Josh Jacobs on that team.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. And I have him 15th. I don't know that I'd put Chris Carson in that realm.
Yeah.
But I would be worried that he would either get bopped and hurt his neck and go back out, or, unless you hear that he's fine and he's coming back, that's probably one I'll text you about on Saturday.
He gives that personal touch.
No,
it's incredible.
I love that. I guess the bigger concern for all fantasy owners out there is what kind of impact, because generally you think when the quarterback goes out, the running game steps up, because the one part of the quarterback position that's harder than the other is throwing the football as opposed to handing it off.
That's for sure.
So you kind of common sense would tell you, Chris Carson would be a good start in a matchup like this.
Yeah.
Because there isn't the fantasy number one quarterback there to help him out anymore.
The problem is if the defense if you know that, the defense can know that. They can make it. And the problem with the NFL is they all a lot of them. Some of them don't, like Mr. Moron, Mr. Stupid, but a lot of them make really, really good adjustments, and they stack the box and they go, beat us, Geno Smith, and we're going to send you these different looks. Are you really up to speed? Are you really ready? Probably you weren't thinking that you were going to start. Russell Wilson's never missed a game.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things where you're totally right. It could go that way, and there's like probably a 50% chance that that's true, but we don't know. So I like to deal in stuff I know.
Stuff tangibles.
The truth is, though, Jacobs, we don't kind of know either because the Gruden factor. So
yeah.
I would go with who you like more, and based on what we hear. If we hear, okay, we were holding him out because we were being a little bit overcautious, he looks great. If Dr. Pro Football Doc, I'll probably have a video on Chris Carson that week.
Yeah.
If he goes, I don't think it's that bad, I think he's going to play and be fine, then I might plug Chris Carson in there. But if you hear the kind of whispers in the bushes that he might not be, that he might be limited, if you hear that word.
Limited
in any capacity.
Limited means out, right?
It doesn't necessarily. Sometimes it means like he's only going to be on 40% snaps when he's usually 85 to 90, or he's going to get 50% of the carries where he usually gets 65. It's just not good.
It's a dramatic reduction in productivity.
Yeah. But limited practice is different. But if they say he's going to be out there, but they might limit his usage. If you hear that, then that kind of makes me pause. Okay. Sometimes it's a rope-a-dope, but this is fantasy. Nothing's given.
A lot of information on today's show. That's gonna do it for this week. The cheat code. Your fantasy. I call him your fantasy valet, Mr. Kenny Parker, because basically, if you text or email us at stonesradio@yahoo.com.
That's right. Just look at your screen right now, folks.
And leave your number. Kenny will text you information up until Sunday morning. He doesn't care. He loves this stuff. So if you have questions that you come on later in the week, you can't contact him.
Tweet me.
Just email. Well, you can tweet him or you can email us at stonesradio@yahoo.com, and the Fantasy Valet will take care of you. You're getting a lot of nicknames out of this.
I don't know why.
We're back next week on a Tuesday, our normal day at 6 o'clock. A reminder, Friday, show 3 of the revival, the Stones and Toy Show. I have the first 2 shows waiting for me. I want to wait until I drop an edible or something. I'll listen to both of them.
They did, too.
Of course, that's my plan. Thanks a lot for joining us, Kenny. Thank you. Stones, McCoy, great job as always. We'll talk to you again next week on The Cheat Code. Good night,
everybody. Good luck.